The Atlanta Braves are this close to getting back to being the most dominant pitching staff in baseball. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, September 12th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. Follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Again, not a lot of overlap today between the newsletter and the podcast. Over at bravestoday.com, we talked about some of Atlanta's offensive changes and what you can see about their approach and how that needs to change. So go check that out, bravestoday.com. Premium subscribers got some bonus content below the paywall. There's some extra fun stuff down there about individual players and some of the observations for them below the paywall. I want to talk about the pitching staff today in a little bit of a shorter episode here because the common assumption, and I put a question out in the show the other day about what do you want to see? Do you want to see two starters and a reliever? Do you want to see one top-end starter? All that kind of stuff. And the kind of consensus was one back-end guy and one starter. Split your money that way. And that makes a lot of sense to me, right? Reinforcing the rotation, reinforcing the bullpen. But there's a scenario, even if you don't spend any additional money other than re-signing Raisel Iglesias, there is a scenario where Atlanta can be one of the best pitching staffs in baseball again. And I say that because in 2024, Atlanta and Seattle tied for best overall ERA in baseball at 3.49. Atlanta had 4 more wins than Seattle. Atlanta pitched more complete games. They had more saves, more strikeouts and all of that. And so they finished with the same ERA, but based on everything else, I'm going to argue Atlanta had the better pitching staff. So they had the number 1 pitching staff in baseball last year. And we all know what happened this year, right? You lost AJ Minter, you lost Joe Jimenez out of your pen. Raisel Iglesias struggled the first couple months. And then all 5 opening day starters went on the 60-day IL for Atlanta. Like there was no saving the pen or the ERA of the team this year. But even if you don't add anybody from outside, other than bringing back Raisel Iglesias on a whatever kind of modest deal you want to give him, probably a 1-and-1 or a 2-year deal owing to the fact that there's a lockout coming, more than likely, after next season, I do think there is a scenario for Atlanta to get back to that top 5 ERA in baseball or number 1 or whatever it might be. So let's talk about how this could work. And it does require some health, but you can see right now how the pieces could fit, okay? So let's walk through your rotation, let's walk through the bullpen, and how everybody could get used. So I think thing number 1 here, the assumption number 1 that we need to go right, and odds are not all of these are going to go right? Like, I'm cognizant of that, but we're talking about best case scenario here, is you have healthy returns, healthy seasons from Chris Sale, from Spencer Schwellenbach. There's your 1 and 2. I also have full faith and confidence that Spencer Strider is going to get back to being that guy again with a full offseason of work. So there's your 1 through 3. Ronaldo Lopez and Hurston Waldrop are your 4 and your 5. And those guys, you can see how those guys, any of those 5, could start a postseason game for you. I'm not saying that you're going to have all of them when you get to the postseason. Odds are you won't. It feels like every single year, Atlanta loses somebody to the 60-day IL or loses them for multiple months, right? 2023, you lost Max Fried. 2024, you lost Ronaldo Lopez. 2025, you lost all 5 of those guys, right? But there is a scenario where Sale, Schwellenbach, Strider, Lopez, Waldrop are your 1 through 5. And given just ordinary regression to the mean on the health, 4 of those guys should make it through the season, especially if Atlanta does the thing where they give additional rest to their guys like they did for so long in 2024. Okay? You can go from there and you can see how the rest of the team could work around them. So those are your 5 starters, okay? In your bullpen, that means 13 pitchers, so that means you have 8 spots in your bullpen. Assuming you re-sign Raisel Iglesias, you have him as your closer. Behind him, you have Tyler Kinley. You have the return of Joe Jimenez. You have Pierce Johnson. You have Dylan Lee. There's 5 relievers that in those roles you trust. Now, there's a whole conversation to be had about whether or not you need to bring in another high leverage reliever, but there's 5 relievers right there that you trust, okay? In this hypothetical scenario, you're counting on Grant Holmes to be healthy, and I'm making him your swingman. You can put him in the pen. You can use him as a starter if you need to. I'm thinking back to 2024 when you saw Grant Holmes pitch 26 times. He made 7 starts. He went 68 1/3 innings. Okay, struck out 70, 15 walks. It's an ERA plus of 117 on a 3.56 ERA. It was worth over a WAR, right? Over 1 WAR. This is a scenario where having him be able to do that, to be a single inning reliever if you need it, to do multiple innings if you need it, to make a spot start, is an incredibly valuable skill. And one that we don't really talk about, having that flexibility. You saw how useful it was in the last week of 2024, right? So that's 6 for your pen. That means you have 2 more spots. One of those spots goes to Joey Wentz. He's in your rotation now. He does not have any options. So you have to keep him at the major league level. He doesn't have any options despite almost being 28 and having less than 2 full years of service time. But that's just how he's been used in his career. So he is another guy, I think, if you keep him in that multi-inning role, he is your kind of designated long man where somebody gets blown up early, you're calling him out of the pen to cover 3 or 4 innings. Whereas Grant Holmes, I think, is still going to be we use you for maybe 2. Or if we have some guys down, we throw you in there as a high leverage option. That last spot as of now goes to Aaron Bummer. Another lefty. He's probably the primary guy you're putting out there. It's like him and Joey Wentz are combining for the blowouts. Bummer's a guy that can take multiple innings. I honestly still think Atlanta should trade Aaron Bummer. If you look at the payroll calculation for this, he is making $9.5 million next year. His salary goes from $3.5 million this year to $9.5 million next year. I don't necessarily think that's the smartest move to keep him at $9.5 million, but I understand it's not incredibly easy to move a reliever who's not a closer making $9.5 million, right? So they probably end up having him here, but you have that. And so again, your rotation now is, I would argue, one of the best in baseball. When they're all healthy and everybody else is healthy to the other teams, I'd put them right up against Seattle. I'd put them right up against Philly. As far as not only quality at the top, you have a Cy Young winner in Chris Sale. You have a Cy Young finalist, I'd argue, in Spencer Strider. And a guy who was trending to be a Cy Young finisher in Spencer Schwellenbach. Reminder, when he went down after 17 starts, he had a 3.09 ERA with 18 walks in 110 innings. He was looking like a Cy Young candidate. Was he going to win it? No. But he was looking like a Cy Young candidate when he went down. So again, best rotation in baseball, I'd argue right there. Hurston Waldrop is an incredibly qualified fifth starter. Ronaldo Lopez, similar to Alex Anthopoulos. Do I think he's going to repeat that 1.99 ERA that he had? No. But do I think he could be a low threes arm? I absolutely do. His fielding independent pitching was 2.65. His expected ERA was in the threes. You obviously have questions about workload and all of that. And this is the optimistic scenario here, right? This is the optimistic, this is what's going to work, what's going to happen here. But what I like is that you have a couple guys that can go deep, right? We've seen Chris Sale go deep. We've seen Schwellenbach go deep. Strider, as a strikeout guy, doesn't always go deep, but we've seen Strider do it. We've seen Schwellenbach do it. We've seen Sale do it. I think Waldrop can get there as well. And then your bullpen has two guys who can take bulk in Wentz and Holmes, a third guy who can take multiple innings, and then your core five high leverage relievers that you trust in their roles. A little optimistic, I know, right? But I think that's kind of your best case scenario without any sort of external adds other than bringing back Raisel Iglesias. Obviously, if you end up signing a starting pitcher, and again, we'll have, as we get into the offseason, we'll have shows about which of the big four do you want to try to sign, a King, a Cease, a Valdez, like whatever. We'll have those shows. We'll have about it. What if you add two? We'll do all of that stuff. But it's very clear to see how if you don't bring in anybody, then just with good health, you can have the best rotation in baseball and one of the best bullpens, the best overall pitching staff in baseball. But if you have even just normal injuries, let's talk about what it looks like there. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Final segment of the show here. I've got a bunch of stuff to get done on Friday morning. Sorry about that, folks, for the little bit shorter show. I'll try to make a bonus sometime this weekend to make up for it. Let's talk about a realistic scenario. Because if you go back and you look at Atlanta, and I mentioned this in the first segment, you got a guy on the 60-day IL every single year, right? Somebody coming out of spring, gets something early, goes down for a while. Again, it was Fried in 23. Try to go back and remember some of the previous seasons, who it may have been that went down. I want to say maybe in 22, it was Kyle Wright that went down, right? He made it through 21. I want to say he led baseball. It was 22 was when Wright led baseball and went. So technically he was down in 22. But like Ian Anderson, both wasn't good and then got hurt in 22. You have somebody go down every year, okay? So if you take one guy out of that rotation, and I don't care who it is. It doesn't matter at this point to try to pick a name. You pick one guy out of that rotation, even if you don't add anybody, you still feel like you have quality depth if you're a believer in what Bryce Elder has been able to do recently. Okay? I talked about this before, like after his last start. Since the start of August, from August through his last start earlier this week against Chicago, Bryce Elder had given you 6 quality starts in 8 outings. And he had the second most quality starts in all of baseball across that span. He tweaked the slider a little bit. He's been more consistent with his locations, more consistent in the zone. And I think all of that legitimately matters. That's all been helpful stuff. And this is a reminder, I need to do a deep dive on on the newsletter about that slider and what's different about it and what's been working for him in this stretch. I need to remember to do that. Assuming you take out one of those 5, and let's take out one of the bullpen arms. other than your closer, I don't care who it is. Take out Kenley, take out Johnson, take out Lee, whatever. Take a guy out of that. You can see how you still have options, right? Bryce Elder can be a fifth starter. And I know a lot of fans don't like hearing about Bryce Elder. He has an ERA of 5.35 this year. At the same time, he's leading you in starts. He's leading you in innings. He is, I think he's like fourth in strikeouts, which is kind of emblematic of where he is as a stuff guy. But he can step into that fifth starter role until you feel like one of your prospects might be ready. And again, this whole scenario is assuming you don't sign anybody this offseason. This is just going with what's in the organization now. One guy goes down, Elder steps into your rotation until you have a prospect ready. Maybe it's a Didier Fuentes on attempt number 2 to come up and be a starter. Maybe it's Blake Burkhalter. Maybe it's J.R. Ritchie. There's a couple different guys in AAA that can be Davis Daniels, probably going to be part of the organization still. He's making minimum salary. He's not yet in, he's not yet in arbitration. He has options, I believe. Maybe he's the guy, right? Maybe you promote somebody out of AA. You're sending Drew Hackenberg to Arizona. Maybe he makes up for the lost innings from the injury and finds the form again, and next year starts off in AA and just looks electric. It wouldn't be the first time Atlanta moved a guy from AA straight to the majors. There are options. And so you take out a starter. Plus, never mind the fact, we're assuming in this situation, you have Grant Holmes and Joey Wentz. And both of them have shown they can start. Now, we can discuss Wentz's effectiveness, right? He's made 10 starts, 11 appearances. He has a 4.76 ERA. Looked really good early, has looked really poor recently. Maybe they can figure it out over the offseason. But it's entirely possible that you are still fine on the pitching front, even if you take out a starter and you take out a reliever, right? Because replacing that starter, again, you have Holmes. We're assuming you'll have Holmes. You have Wentz. You have Bryce Elder as your first man up out of AAA. You've got a couple prospects down there. Same thing with the bullpen. I gave you the whole list of bullpen arms, and if you want me to go over it again real quick, I mean, it's Raisel Iglesias as your closer, assuming you re-sign him. Tyler Kenley, Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, Aaron Bummer as your five standard single inning relievers, although Bummer can go multiple, right? But if you lose one of those guys, assuming it's not your closer, you've got guys you can call up and you shift everybody else into a slightly higher leverage role, right? Rather than throwing Tyler Kenley in the 6th, maybe you're throwing Kenley in the 7th, and you're throwing Joe Jimenez in the 8th if Pierce Johnson's down, right? If you lose Joe Jimenez again, maybe you throw Pierce Johnson in the 8th, Kenley in the 7th, whatever. You could promote a Daisabel Hernandez. He's got stuff. It's just a matter of making sure he can throw enough strikes. And then again, he was exceptionally lucky with his strikeouts for a while. Maybe it's Dylan Dodd as a lefty who can go multiple innings. Maybe it's Dane Dunning as a righty who can go multiple innings. You look down in AAA, there's a Hayden Harris. There's so many options down here. Roldy Munoz, Austin Cox, Hunter Stratton, Connor Siebold. So many guys that have future control that can be multi-inning relievers for you. So Atlanta has options here. And even without any sort of additions, you can see a path to being one of the better rotations and pitching staffs in general in baseball. So that means your spending goes farther, right? You can, unlike what you did this last offseason with the bullpen, you can go for quality over quantity. What if you gave a pillow contract to Devin Williams, right? There are so many back-end relievers that are going to be hitting the market. Not as many as we thought, but there will be guys. a Ryan Helsley. Maybe you bring back veteran Kirby Yates. Ryan Presley. Maybe you re-sign Iglesias, but you also bring in Kenley Jansen for a second stint. You're just collecting the Curacao Infinity Stones at that point. You have Profar, you have Ozzy, you have Jansen. You're just picking up all the Curacao guys. Maybe it's a Luke Weaver. Maybe it's a Jordan Romano. Maybe Paul Sewald hits the market because both sides don't pick up their end of the mutual option. That's what usually happens. So even just one signing can push you into a situation where you can take a guy like a Aaron Bummer and just put him on the market and it's not a big deal, right? You can maybe fill a rotation hole with a Grant Holmes and stick this guy into your back end mix. It's really easy to see how Atlanta's pitching staff could be really good really quickly. Let me know what you think. What do you want the Braves to do if you go and get one bullpen piece? Would you rather it be re-signing Raisel Iglesias or going outside of the team to bring in somebody new? Let me know and why. If you're watching on YouTube, leave it in the comments down below. If you're listening on audio, send it to a friend. The audio numbers, I want to get those better. That's what the Believe Network's looking for. So send it to a friend. But you can email me. I'm at contact@bravestoday.com. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball. This has been Braves Today for Friday, September 12th. Do me a favor, listening on audio, leave a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we go live with the next episode. And also, swing on by the Locked On Sports Atlanta postcast tonight and all weekend. I'm covering all 3 games live after the game over on Locked On Sports Atlanta and Locked On Braves. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.